Morning, everyone. I'm actually quite pleased to be at the end. I think everything that everyone's talked about so far kind of builds into what we've tried to do. Obviously, we're taking a very different approach, kind of coming from the cloud workspace. But just before I kick off, I just, by a show of hands, how many people have adopted cloud in an application setting? So 365, Dropbox, something like that. Yeah, quite a lot of people. And now from an infrastructure perspective, so something like offsite backups, disaster recovery, infrastructure. Has anyone? Yeah, so we've got a few. Okay, so we've got a couple of people that are kind of converted. Now, we've done a couple of these kind of events with ComputerWorld. So what we're not going to do this time is do an iland 101. We've previously done a demonstration at the Define Tomorrow event in Bristol. So if any of you guys kind of caught that, that really gives us a deep understanding, or you guys a deep understanding of exactly how iland works. But what we wanted to do today was just focus on one particular area, so disaster recovery, and a product that we've got for disaster recovery, which is one of a few that we've got, that we really see as a kind of next generation disaster recovery product. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at it from a customer's point of view. So, now I've turned it off. Oh, there we are. So we've kind of got three key focus areas in iland. We've got a Veeam offering, which does things like backup, it does things like replication, and actually that's a really, really good step for a lot of people who are not looking at cloud. So you guys that didn't put your hands up at all, that haven't looked towards cloud, that's a really, really good first step. A lot of people have Veeam on site, they're comfortable with Veeam, and they're happy to take the first step using a technology that they are comfortable with. We've also got your full public cloud. So we've got customers that use infrastructure as a service with iland. So Mitel, I'm sure a lot of you guys have come across them. They actually run out of the iland cloud. So all their production environment runs out of the iland cloud today. And then we've also got our disaster recovery as a service. So our real enterprise grade disaster recovery as a service. So I don't know if any of you guys are aware, but iland are actually in the top right hand corner of Gartner's Magic Quadrant for DR as a service, and it's our DR product with Zerto that has got us into that position. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a kind of deep dive into Bluestone. So they're a financial service customer based in London. They're kind of mid-tier financial services, but the reason we're kind of going into those guys is because they have a lot of kind of challenges that you guys in the SMB market are likely to see. So some of the challenges that they're saying, from a very high level, a lot of companies have implemented a cloud-first initiative. Now, whether that's come from an IT level or whether it's come from a business level, that often leads to challenges, because what does that actually mean? How can I actually deploy into the cloud for something that I've never even thought about putting into the cloud? But that's our policy as a business. We're now cloud first. They've also got the issue around DR. So they need a new approach to DR because of infrastructure. So infrastructure is coming up for a refresh. It might not necessarily be the whole infrastructure. It might be the storage layer, it might be the server infrastructure, it might be the networking. But that could be a couple of £100,000 that you're spending on one part of the infrastructure. And that's a real challenge for businesses now. It's really hard to go to the board level and say, I need £200,000, when they can go and drop their files into, Dropbox or something like that and say, well, why do I need to spend all this money on storage infrastructure? And then the other area that Bluestone had a real challenge with, obviously being in financial services, highly regulated for good reason, because all of our money and pensions and mortgages all sit within there. But that's a real issue when looking at cloud, because you lose that control over your compliance, your security. And actually, if it's there, how do I see that? How do I access it? Do I have reporting on it? That's a real challenge. So what we're going to do, and my colleague Richard Stinton is one of our solutions architects, is going to take you through our cloud console and show you exactly how we can address some of these challenges through some of the benefits that we have within our cloud console. They're a little bit different and a bit more of a differentiator than some of the major players like Azure and AWS that I'm sure you guys are kind of familiar with. So one of the major kind of benefits is the fact that we support vendor diversity and multi-cloud strategy. So particularly with DR, even if you have got production workloads sitting in a cloud somewhere, you may look at including another cloud service provider into that for the reason of vendor diversity. So if you have got a cloud-first initiative, it doesn't mean you have to go out and look at the market and say, who's going to meet the needs of every single one of my cloud requirements. You can go out there and say, okay, here's my production environment. Here's a subset of that production environment. That sits well there. That sits well there. Disaster recovery sits really well over here. And you can spread across. So we support that, and we actually say that's something that we would tell our customers to have a think about. Think about the vendor diversity when you're looking at the cloud. Obviously, a cost-effective solution. So from a very high level, I'm sure you guys are all aware, one of the major benefits of cloud computing is the ability to take the storage layer and the compute layer and pay for them independently. So for things like disaster recovery, it's absolutely fantastic because you don't need compute on a day-to-day basis. The only time you need compute is when you test the environment or you run the environment live. So if you can remove that cost from your monthly disaster recovery budget, then you've now got a very cost-effective solution that you can go back to the board and say, I don't need to spend £200,000 on infrastructure. Here's my cost for storing this data in the cloud, and here's my cost for if I had to run that data in the cloud. Hopefully, everyone's kind of got some kind of insurance policy that if the building did blow up and you did need to run in the cloud for a period of time, you can recover those costs. So that's not usually an issue. And then on the regulatory requirements. So Bluestone obviously need a highly regulated cloud. They need the visibility into that. So we've built in native security and compliance into our console. Now, the most important thing about that is it isn't just there, it's accessible and it's available for you to interact with exactly when you need to. So if your compliance department come to you and say, I need the latest version of iland's ISO 27001, you can go into your cloud console, you can download that. Or if your security officer comes up to you and says, I need to know how many threats there were within the iland cloud environment over the last month, you can go in there and pull a report, and that's really, really key. And then the final kind of benefit that really ties in with all of that is around the testing. So we provide non-intrusive DR testing, but it's on demand. So as everyone knows, things don't go right, Monday morning at 9 o'clock when you've just got in the office. They go wrong at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, when you're not ready for a disaster happening. So you should be able to test under those circumstances as well, to be able to test in the middle of the night and be confident that your disaster recovery environment is going to come up. So any questions at this stage? Everyone relatively happy? Fantastic. So I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Richard Stinton, who's just going to run through those benefits in a little bit more detail and actually show you how you would interact and benefit from each of those kind of features that we've built in.
Which one was it? The right one?
Yes, the right one.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So I've only got about 200 slides, so we should be okay in the next 15 minutes or so. That was a joke. It's all right. Only got about 6 slides. So one of the things we're really proud of is this console that we've developed, and everyone might go, wow, it's a console. But what we've done is to take a number of solutions and bring those all together in one console that, as Alex has said, is completely self-service for you as consumers of the cloud. Now, in my past, I've worked for VMware and I've worked for Microsoft Azure, and VMware had a solution for building a multi-tenanted cloud called vCloud Director, and we use that as one of the solutions in our cloud, and it does certain things really well, but it doesn't do everything. Microsoft Azure have about 4 different consoles that you need to log on to, depending on what you're wanting to do, whether you're looking at billing, whether you're looking at user provisioning, or actually doing stuff, and it can be quite confusing. So we've tried to bring everything together into one cloud, into one console, and then provide role-based authentication and control that gives you access to particular features depending on your username and password. And this is all developed in HTML5, so there's no need to have Adobe Flash, which you then have to patch every Tuesday. It's all nice modern browser. Doesn't actually support Internet Explorer, so it only runs on Firefox and Chrome and Safari and those sort of things. And it's available as a fully fledged application from Apple and Google, Android, that sort of thing. So everything that you can do in the web browser, you can do on your phone or your tablet. Alex mentioned vendor diversity and multi-cloud strategy. Now, if you look at people like Gartner, they're saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. You know, don't just move everything to Microsoft or everything to Amazon. And indeed, if you won't remember back a few years, there was a vendor called 2E2 who used to co-locate and manage computing services for lots of quite big customers, and they went spectacularly bust and really held a lot of their customers to ransom in terms of we've got all your servers and your data, but because we're now in administration, we're not entirely sure how we're going to get that data back to you. So that caught a lot of people caught a lot of coals as a result of that. So certainly the guidance coming down from people like the FCA is this idea of working with multiple vendors. So if you're working with you maybe doing production services on premises or with a managed services provider, do your DR with someone else, do your backup with someone else. And we talked earlier this morning about this 3-2-1 rule for backups. So what we're saying is, even if it's your first toe in the water, then maybe think about doing that off-site backup to a cloud provider like iland. And today we're offering a 1-month free trial of our Veeam Cloud Connect service. So if you are already a Veeam customer, you can do that in literally 2 or 3 clicks of a mouse and start doing backup copy jobs or actual backups to the iland cloud completely free of charge for a month, up to a terabyte. So iland, I'll be entirely sure most of you probably haven't heard of us. We are a relatively small company, been around for 22 years. But importantly, we have 2 data centers here in the UK. We're a UK registered limited company. Data centers within Equinix, so very large and well-established tier 3+ provider in London and Manchester. Because of good old Brexit, we're now opening a data center in Amsterdam in the next few weeks to cater for our European customers, and also due to the amount of work we're doing in Asia Pac, we're opening in Sydney as well as our location in Singapore. And we also have 5 data centers in the US. So we are a global company. Our headquarters is in Texas, but in the UK we're headquartered in the Shard. So if anyone's passing London, do feel free to call in and admire the view. As Alex has said, it's a very cost-effective solution. One of our big differentiators over the big guys is that we don't have this concept of t-shirt sizes or instance sizes. We work very much on the VMware resource pool concept. So we have 2 or maybe 3 different models. You can either use a true pay-as-you-go model, where we will literally charge you by the hour for the actual CPU and RAM and storage that you consume. So if you have a virtual machine that's configured so many CPU, so much RAM, but it's only running at 5% CPU and 50% RAM utilization, we'll only charge you for that. We won't charge you for the fully provisioned amount, which is what the other guys would do. Flip side of that is if you're risk averse, if your financial director likes to have an ongoing known monthly cost, we can reserve some capacity for you. So in the same way that you create a resource pool in VMware, we can create a resource pool for you that's got so many gigahertz and so many gigabytes of CPU and RAM and storage, and you pay for that every month, whether or not you consume it. And VMware, as we know, will allow you to fill that resource pool with as many VMs as you can fit in, using overcommitment and transparent page sharing and all those good things, but eventually you'll hit the buffers. So we then have a third option, which is an amalgam of the two of these things. So you can then burst above that fixed resource pool size to give you extra resources, maybe at month end or quarter end, and we'll just bill you on an hourly basis for that. So very, very cost effective. And what we've done, as you can see here in our portal, is provide you with real-time billing. It's shown in dollars, but in the UK it'd be in pounds or in euros, for exactly what's being consumed by the different food groups of CPU, RAM, and so forth. And you can set alerts, like you're running out of space, you need to go and maybe buy some more resources. Alex touched on security and compliance, so this is really important in all the different sectors. We are very much a cross-sector organisation, but we seem to have landed with kind of the mid-tier financial services, hedge funds. We do very well in the law practices, solicitors, barristers. We seem to be doing loads of barristers at the moment. Accountancy firms, those sort of things. So it's really across the piece, manufacturing. And a lot of these guys have strict security and compliance. So, we're ISO 27001, ISO 20001. We've just passed what's called the Cloud Security Alliance, or CSA Star, at the gold level, which is only held by a very small handful of cloud providers globally. So we've got all that security and compliance and process baked into our cloud. This is not something that's just been thrown together in someone's back bedroom and presented to the internet. And everything that we do in there, as Alex has said, is presented through the console. So the platform has, sorry to the Defender guys, but we have Trend Micro baked in as our security solution, which again is a hypervisor-based anti-malware, antivirus solution. It does all sorts of other clever things like intrusion detection and firewalling and file integrity monitoring and all these sort of things. You can see if someone's edited a file that shouldn't have been edited, or someone's changed something in some way. And this is all produced through auditing reports that are self-service produced. But also we partner with another company called Tenable, who have a product called Nessus that is constantly polling any services that you have exposed to the internet, so web servers, that sort of thing, and looking for potential places where people could potentially break in. So for example, if you're running Windows and you run up an IaaS server and you just connect it to the internet with the firewall wide open, Nessus will automatically tell you what you should do, the steps you should take to remediate IaaS. So some really good stuff there. Role-based access control, I've already alluded to. So we have a number of different controls as to exactly what people can do, read-only users, all those kind of things. So as Alex has said, we do infrastructure as a service, so just running virtual machines. But we, for disaster recovery as a service, you may be just spinning up VMs for a short period for DR testing, or for a longer period if there's a real failover. If you come to iland for any period of time, we can set up cloud-to-cloud DR as well. So in the US, we have a lot of customers who are hit by tornadoes and hurricanes, and normally, as soon as they get the forecast that there's a hurricane or a tornado coming, they'll invoke DR, failover to iland. They can then shut down their data center, turn the power off, wait till the hurricane's blown through, and then maybe a week or two later they can fail back. And so it is a true bidirectional capability. But oftentimes people will say, hey, I've been running in iland for the last 2 weeks. Why don't I just leave it there? And I can kind of get rid of my on-premises facilities now and just run completely in the cloud. So we've already touched on compliance to a certain extent, but one of the most annoying and painful parts of disaster recovery, particularly in a compliance-based environment like financial services, is all the documentation that you have to do for auditing. So whenever you do a failover test or you set up the disaster recovery environment, we automatically produce documentation for you. So exactly what your protection status is for all the virtual machines that you're running, which can be prioritized into different tiers and that sort of thing. So that saves a lot of time. And then we touched on non-intrusive DR testing. So a lot of the older, for example, array-based replication solutions, maybe running SRM and those sort of things, if you wanted to do a DR test, you effectively had to break the mirror and then bring up the secondary array in your DR site. But meanwhile, your production array was not protected anymore. So if you had a real failure at that point, you would have several hours of lost data. Nice thing with the Zerto-based solution is you can do a test failover, bring up all your virtual machines in the DR site, do some testing, maybe upgrade an application, upgrade Windows, patch Windows, make sure everything still works happily, and then just destroy that DR environment and nothing's happened in your production back on premises. Everything's just carried on. It's continued to replicate all that time. And as we can see, or hopefully see a little bit in the screen here, you can select your individual virtual protection groups, as they're called, and maybe just do a partial failover. And the little pull-down menu on that middle picture, Zerto is what's called a continuous replication solution. It's not snapshot-based. So you can scroll back over days, weeks, maybe even months of the journal in about 5-second increments. So again, brilliant solution for ransomware, as we heard this morning. You know, it could have been several hundred days since the ransomware was injected, but you could potentially scroll back through and recover your systems from that point. And again, there's some blurring between traditional backup and traditional replication solutions, because Zerto now can be used for file level recovery. So someone accidentally deleted an important document 100 days ago, you can scroll back through the journal and select that file without having to spin up the VMs and recover that file back. So it could be in a database table or whatever. So kind of in summary, say we call it the iland Secure Cloud Platform. My analogy is it's a bit like a Lexus car. It doesn't come with pages and pages and pages of extras. We've just put all the extras into the product because we believe those are the solutions that enterprise customers need. So you don't have to worry about antivirus. You don't have to worry about backup when you're running in the cloud because it's all baked in. You don't have to worry about Windows licensing. It's all just there. Security and compliance, as I've kind of touched on, you know, the data is encrypted. Just for the techies in the room, we run Cisco UCS for our servers, Cisco Nexus backend, Nimble, flash accelerated and all flash storage. So we have 3 different tiers of storage that you can buy at different speeds. You know, typically getting about 25 to 30,000 IOPS out of every VM compared to 800 IOPS on Azure. Exceptional support, free of charge. So 24/7 support via phone, email, or the website. As we say, you know, best of breed platform, and really proud of our big data driven console. So we won awards from Cassandra. It's one of the largest Cassandra data lakes in the world in terms of all the management information that we put in there. So we've been winning awards for that.